Thank you for joining us on the Downing Cut. Today we have Steve Eaton, who is a multifaceted filmmaker, visual effects artist, writer, producer, and father who works with the CCC Entertainment, known for his contributions to the Horrorverse series. You want to check that out, put that link in. He is currently developing his magnum opus, the rotoscope animation project Universal Opera, while also balancing his roles as a nurse and a creative artist. Welcome to the Downing Cut.
Thank you very much. I
How are
appreciate
you
I
today?
very much. I appreciate you inviting me. I'm off work, so I'm already in better shape now. So
Well, I mean, it takes a lot of courage, I have to say, to work in healthcare and to be a nurse, and I think it's a lot of just like a marathon. You just keep on pushing because it's like you know once you help one patient, another one comes in, and it just
hmm
never stops. And it's I think if
that's the
anything, it's
truth.
like really good job security. Really,
No
when it comes
kidding.
to it.
That was literally why I did it. I find it kind of interesting, knowing as many artistic people as I do. Um, how many people don't really talk about their day jobs? It's almost like a thing they want to hide away. Like, no, I don't need money. I'm fine. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm a nurse. You're gonna figure it out the first time I have to cancel something to run off. So, you know,
yeah.
it's a thing. Sorry, but
Well, you have those folks that are they're okay with being, I mean, if you will, I guess it's not really a starving artist, but it is what we've classified as a starving artist. Working
yeah.
the gigs to survive, and then really focusing on the passion of the artistic endeavors. I think I'm the same way. Having a family, you're a father, having kids. It's like there is a priority, there is a hierarchy, and you can't
hmm
just follow your passion. You have to provide for the family, and that matters. So
Yeah. Totally.
kudos.
I literally I did the starving artist thing until I got real tired of it. And then I was like, I'm going to go do what my dad did. I'm going to go be a nurse. And if I had it to do over again, I would have done it 10 years earlier and then done film more, I think. And probably
Yeah.
worked less, but it's worked out. It's a really good way to, I think, stay connected to the human side of life, I think. You can never really take yourself too incredibly seriously when you kind of are constantly reminded that we're fallible, weird human beings at any given time.
I'm looking at your IMDb, and I'm seeing all these movie posters. And did you make these movie posters? I see one
I
behind you. Did you
did.
make that?
No, that one is Robot Jock. It just happens to be one of my favorites of all time. Um,
Nice.
I remember, I think I saw that in the theaters when I was like 11, and I've been in love with it ever since. The ones for the Horrorverse, I believe ever since I came on,
Yeah.
I believe every poster for the Horrorverse I've done, and then pretty much all the art you'll see, like so, for example, the all the thumbnails if you go on our YouTube. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've either done or
Oh, you did.
redone in the last couple of years. Um,
Okay.
and then a lot of the background art, like on the crowdfunder, I did the little, get a executive producer and all that kind of stuff.
Nice. Well, that you're kind of a man over after my own passion too. I love design and graphic design. Let me ask you then.
Yeah.
So this is our first question, and we go into is how did you start? How did you start into this journey? And like, I know you do all kinds of aspects. You're a producer, you're a writer, um, you do special effects, the art,
Uh-huh.
graphic design. What came first, and then what sparked you to do it to dive into the film industry?
I think to begin with, so when I was probably 4 or 5, seeing my little guy, I've got a 10-year-old, and seeing him kind of go through the same journey, I'm like, I was drawing since I can remember. So I never stopped. I'm not a fantastic artist. I've gotten slowly better. When anybody says I can't draw, I'm like, just do it for 40 years. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And, I started then and never stopped. Originally, I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist, like probably most filmmakers. I have filmmakers of our age. I have undiagnosed ADHD, So, I wanted to do everything for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be a makeup artist. Then when I got out of that, I wanted to be a director. That was the one that kept coming around, like be a director, be a director. Wanted to be, and this is where I sort of got into working, was as a storyboard artist. I started that because it was very strange to go off on a tangent. Like back in the day, they used to do these things where people would try to be pitching their projects and they would have comic artists, usually not fantastic ones. But at the time, I was 25 or whatever, 30. And I really was trying to get in, and I had a guy who had a screenplay, and he's like, "Hey, if we draw it, a small layout," and he was kind of a mentor, as some relationships go. It doesn't always work out, but yeah, I illustrated some of that for him, and then I then edited one of his films, and then I edited the second film that he was going to work on,
Wow.
and yeah, and it just kind of rolled in because then I'm like, by that point, I had watched enough YouTube, obviously, to start doing a certain amount of special effects. And you know how it is, and I don't know if you really edit by itself at all for other people, but you end up going, God, if we could take this shot and just stitch them together, and nobody else is you're not gonna pay anybody to do it, so you learn how to do it. And that's kind of how it just rolled on. I was really a filmmaker that just went, I need to figure something out. I'll figure something out. And that's pretty much where I'm at now. I went to screenwriting school, but I say screenwriting school, I mean, I took some private classes with people, but it was just always as a part of trying to become a filmmaker general, I guess you could call it, which is, yeah,
Yeah.
what I'm doing now.
Multifaceted of all things. What now you mentioned that directing kept on popping up. How did that pop up as far as
I
your past?
I think, like most people, maybe not, who knows? We're all living our own subjective experiences, but I think most people who have a creative instinct, you kind of go, well, if I could do it this way, if I could do it this way, and you're like, well, if it was me directing, we could just do it that way. And I think I'm not really much of a control freak, but at the same time, I'm completely a control freak. Um, I try very hard to keep it on a low roar where I don't actually let it out of my mouth, but in my brain, I'm like, well, people would just do what I'm wanting them to do. Um, Very much nicer than that, but that's always in the
Yeah.
back of my head. I'm like, so I think that's like a very directorly kind of instinct, is just to say, I know how it should work in my brain, so let's just do it that way. And actually, working with Aaron, who you already had on your show, and the Horrorverse people like Chuck Lawson and Kelvin and um, everybody, it's been really great because a lot of that had to get beaten out of me, I think. And it's
Oh.
fantastic. It's really a good thing because it's so easy when you're used to illustrating.
How did you get connected to that group?
Very similar to what we're doing right now. I was listening to, oh God, we're going to go back here. So I lived in California for most of my life. When I was 25, I moved away, moved to Colorado. That's actually where I, oddly enough, ended up coming back around because then I wanted to do film stuff. And then I moved my wife, who's from Marysville, up this way. I came up to visit her dad to do, at the time, the very sexist, like, can I have your daughter's hand thing? Um, and so we did that. And then I'm like, we should just move here because I like it here and it's too damn hot where I come from.
Yeah.
Um, and I fell in love with it immediately. I just loved it. And the whole starving artist thing at the time was getting really old. So
Mm.
I then said, hey, I'm going to go be a nurse, and had to pay a lot of penance for the credit and everything that you end up knocking up as a starving artist. And then once I got out of that, I was then saying, hey, I think I might be in the mental place to start trying to do film again, just not going insane doing it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I started listening to PMW podcasts, and they have another show. It's called Around the Reel. They're still doing it, and I've been on it a few times. And that's kind of how it started. I remember at the time, I'm like, hey, I want to meet these guys. And so I just reached out to the lovely Samantha Hanna, who works with us, and she's a fantastic documentarian of her own that works with us. Um, and yeah, I went on the show, and I'm like, in the back of my head, I was even saying, I'm like, I want to work with these guys. And so I
Nice.
offer, and I said, hey, you should let me. We were doing The Shape at the time, which is their
Mm.
Michael Myers thing, and
Hmm.
I said, hey, you should let me do any special effects that you don't know how to do or you need some help with. And there was things that they wanted to do that at the time I don't even think I was able to do it. There's still one shot, bless our hearts, that was a rolling ambulance shot. And it kills me every time I see it, even to this day, because I'm like, it's way bigger than we should. We didn't have a really good asset for it. I should have had a month more, blah, blah, blah. This is the director talking, you know. But we did it. And I did a few other things. There was a really cool thing of Michael Myers standing in front of a fire that wasn't there. And we moved along. And then by the time we got to the Horrorverse proper, what we called, I mean, that was part of it, but we were doing they were starting the episodes, and I was telling him, I'm like, yeah, just let me know if you need any special effects help. And the amazing Chuck Lawson, who I'm so glad, I tell him all the time, and it annoys the piss out of him, that he's doing much better now, but at the time he needed to take a little bit of a powder and go live life, real life, for a short bit. So they asked me if I'd help out, basically doing what he did for a little while, and then he was back in, like, it felt like he was never really gone. But it basically, when he came back in, I'm like, all right, I kept your seat warm. He's like, no, you just have a different seat. And
Yeah.
so that kind of worked out that way. And they're really wonderful, gracious people. And for a sensitive human like me, I kind of need that because I'm constantly doubting everything, you know. Uh, and yeah, I- I'm so sorry. I don't even know where we start. Oh, so that's how we got to working with them, was the podcast, and then kind of rolled through. So,
Now you said you substituted for Chuck Lawson. What, like,
hmm
how, in what way? Like
well,
writing or
it's
acting or?
a little of both. I mean, not acting. He never stepped away from acting. I just think that, like, and Joe, excuse me, normally I do more research as well, but like, I know that you make films. So the kind of the backside of the store with all the calling everybody and all that, and
Yeah,
having
the
to make
producing,
sure everything gets, what's that?
producer, production
Yeah,
manager.
just
Yeah.
producing. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that is not a part that I'm particularly good at, like doing scheduling and that sort of thing. You could ask Aaron
Yeah.
and Chuck, they tell you to say it. I'm like, that's not my purview. But doing things like being on set and figuring out things, like when we did the Horrorverse, it's actually coming out tomorrow. The Hunt's coming out
I
tomorrow.
know. It's
Um,
exciting.
and it was
Except
things
this will be
like,
in the future when people see this, so it's
yes,
already out,
you
folks.
could, as you guys see this right now, you may go to YouTube, the Horrorverse, at cccentertainmentgroup.com. Chuck will be so proud of me for shilling this properly. And you can see it. But there was, like, say for example, there were things like, I have that artist thing. So it's like, we had a big old pile of wood out in the middle of the woods. Like, it was a lumber yard, and they would tell me what the name of it was, but it's a thing where they basically put all the pieces that can't go into it directly. So I was like, I'm looking at them, and they're like, well, we're going to be shooting there. That's going to be the layer. And I'm like, that don't look like a layer. So I start yoking around wood and trying to make it look more like a layer, and blah, blah, blah. So stuff like that, you know.
Okay.
And when actors need a little help here, or somebody needs a little help here, once again, the ADHD thing, where you're like, I can throw on a hat, take off the hat, I'll jump on the ground, hold up a hat for somebody, literally. We did that for Aaron. I held the Freddy hat. Yeah, just stuff like that. Anything. You know how a
Yeah.
producer is, like, anything.
Yeah.
And so now there's more of us.
To jump in. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I was going to say that when I was talking to Aaron, I do remember we were talking a little bit, and this is not sponsored by Studio Binder, but Studio Binder has that capability of doing all the calls, sending out the emails by one click of a button. So it was kind of interesting when you were saying, like,
Do you use
eh,
that, Joe?
I used it in my last
Have you
film,
used
yes.
it? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I love and I hope you get sponsored by them because I'm going to show for them too. I was their YouTube channel, some of the best content.
Yes.
Like I love video essays, especially on film, like them and Every Frame a Painting. Like that's, I didn't go to proper film school. That was my film school. So Studio
Yeah.
Binder, if I could afford you, I would use you, and you should
Yeah.
give Joe a free one so I can hear more about it.
You can set up a free account. Doesn't have all the capabilities, but
Ah,
if you're ready to do a film, just pay
it would
for it like a
probably
month
help.
and just boom. Yeah, it's really nice. So, Steve, your experience is pretty vast, and you've had different skill sets that go across the board: visual effects, producer, special effects, and you've been with the CCC Entertainment Group, watching them. Even before that, it sounds like you were doing some stuff on
Hmm.
set as well. My main question to you is, what makes a good actor from your perspective?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. By the way, I must compliment you, and I told you in the chat that we did before, you're a fantastic interviewer. I really enjoyed the
Oh,
show.
thank you.
Um, what makes a fantastic actor? I'm going to give the best answer I can give, and it's going to be kind of rote. Honesty and acting is reacting. There are so many people that can stand there and give you a good line, like a single line, the way that you, even as a writer, could think that it would do, but they're not necessarily going to inhabit that character. And they certainly aren't always listening to the people around them. Uh, and that ability to listen to the people around them, even if you don't say one friggin', and I say this as a writer, this is hard to say. But like, even if you don't say a friggin' word, it's on the page, but you can sound like you're in the moment. Um, and you are actually listening to the people around you and bouncing the emotions off of each other. To me, that's what makes a good actor. Because that's what makes it alive. Like we're trying to fake reality in every way possible, and that's what makes it alive to me.
Yeah. As a writer, when you're writing a script and you hand it off to an actor and you listen to your own words, how does that make you feel?
It's the best. It's the best. Especially when they thought that it was good enough to stick to the actual line that you wrote. Because you know how it is. They're like, they
Yeah.
get on a roll and they're, like, I got a couple of people, but like every once in a while you just hear the notes that you wrote on the page and they're singing it the way that you thought of it in your head and it sounds like a real moment. There's nothing better. That's why we do
Yeah.
this. You know what I mean? At least that's why I do it. It's that moment. Yeah.
Do you ever get to a point where you wrote the script and then you hand it off and the actors performing it, and do you sometimes forget that you wrote it and you're like, hey, that sounds pretty good? Or at other times, are there points where you're like really surprised on how the actor performed your lines?
Constantly on both. I uh, I am both blessed and cursed with a really terrible memory. So constantly, it's really good to have a bad memory with things like rewrites, for
Yeah.
example, because you can like you're writing something and then you have to pick it up and rewrite it, and you're like, who wrote this shit? And I constantly have that feeling. And the same thing on set, like Ira Katz, one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth,
Yeah.
who's
He just
in the
signed up.
horrorverse.
Yeah.
Oh, he's oh sweet. Yeah, you're gonna love him.
Yeah.
He's the coolest dude ever. Um, so Ira has this way of really getting to the gist of what I was meaning, and if I was really just if I had remembered my words, it would drive me insane. But I can't, so it doesn't. So yeah, both of those all the time.
Yeah. Do you ever get to the point now having a bad memory? I've experienced this where someone's reading your lines, you're like, did I write that? It sounds so
Yes.
good.
all the time. Everyone, usually I tell you when I remember him, and I don't know if you're this way. Like I think every once in a while, like in my real life, probably I like the, I think I'm like most people. I think I'm funny. And you'll say a line or you'll write a line, and it's like, that's such a friggin' line. You're like, that is something you wrote to be said and be memorable. And those are the only times I ever really remember it because I'm like particularly proud of it.
Yeah.
And it's usually the kind of lines where I'm like, it's so written, and that's kind of its own bad thing. But that's usually the only time, like when I'm on set, or like Aaron will turn to me and go, "What the hell did you mean when you wrote that?" And I'm like, "Didn't you write that? I don't remember writing this shit," you know. Um, so
That's hilarious.
yeah,
So, as someone who balances being a nurse, a father, and a filmmaker, how do these diverse roles influence your creative process, particularly like in visual effects?
that I will say, as far as visual effects, it it doesn't really play into it except for simply in time. Like I have, like literally right now behind me in the room behind me, I have my computer's rendering something for a lovely man named Chris Shern. Hi, Chris. And like I literally, I'm like, okay, put this in really quick while I'm on a. I shouldn't say this because I'm, I work and stuff, but like I'll be on a phone call or something and I'll be changing something and I'll
Yeah.
click render, run out the door, go do work, and then come back and be like, how to look? Ah, shoot. I'll throw in a different keyframe or something. But no,
Yeah.
like I think overall, I didn't know much about photography until the last few years, but I really do attempt anyway to try when I'm doing visual effects. I really make an attempt to try and make it look like it was actually shot in the moment. And the more I've learned about cameras, the better I've gotten at that.
Mm.
But I think that's just like realizing life around you all the time. There's never anything that looks perfect.
Yeah.
And when anything's too clean, like I always put a blur on something and I'll be the only person that notices. And it's because I'm like, the amount of times that you genuinely, unless you can see everything directly in that same plane of existence, it's probably not perfectly in focus. And that's a difference often. Or like, uh, um, I'll talk shit on Aaron for a moment. Like he's got a thing, and I love him for this, but he'll go like, "It's fine," and I'll be like, "No, I'm gonna throw some grain on it." No, don't put any grain on it for God's sake. And like, because he likes a clean look, and I'm like, like let's grit that shit up a little bit. I'm gonna ruin it a little bit before you put it on there. It's stuff like that.
What program do you use for visual effects?
I'm a cheapskate. I'm a genuine cheapskate. I have back when I was editing uh, a film that was made as White Tiger, was released as Death Fighter, which might be the worst name in cinema history. Um, it is. I bought Adobe CS5, and this was before they changed to cloud,
Hmm.
and I still use it on a daily basis. And it drives me insane sometimes when I know there's literally a tool that's in cloud that would make a job so much easier. But then I
Hmm.
start doing the money math in my head, and I'm
Yeah.
like, but you own this. Like, you own this. So my wife, and I've been married for 18 years. She's an incredibly smart woman. Tells me all the time. She's like, just get the cloud. And I'm like, I'm not paying $80 for that shit. It just drives me nuts. Someday they'll make me do it, but not this day.
One of these
Um,
days, she's going to go, happy anniversary. Here's the Creative Cloud for you.
I know, and knowing me, I'll be like, all right, I'll try it for a month, and then I'll go back to my cheapskate ways. But
From a technical aspect, I'm going to get a little geeky.
yeah,
What are you running? What kind of computer are you? A Mac guy or a PC guy? And how much
I'm
RAM
a
do you have
PC
on your
guy.
processor? Okay.
I have 16 gigs uh, on my. I have a laptop. Um, I have
Yeah.
a PC laptop. The main reason I like PCs, and it's going to change in the near future. I love getting geeky. I don't think there's enough tech talk in the modern stuff because everybody's
Yeah.
gotten bored with it, but I love it. Um, I have, of course, now it's going right by my mind to tell you what I have, but um, I know
It's like an
I've got
i7.
like, what's that?
i7, i5, i9s. What are the
I think it's an
processors now? I
i7.
don't know.
I think it
Yeah.
was it's an i7. And I've got 16 gigs in there, RAM, a couple of terabytes. I've got like, I literally have a bunch of hard drives. Like I've got a couple of 5 terabyte drives that are not vacuumed, uh, but Velcroed, sorry, to my,
Oh yeah.
the backside of my, monitor. And it's my buddy. That thing's been with me quite a while. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and it's it's funny now, like the things that I try to use, I try to think of it like I have no money, and it's really easy to think that way when I look at my bank account. But um,
I know the
it's
feeling.
yeah, so it's things like with Universal Opera, for example, I'm like, okay, I know at some point I want to figure out a cartoon filter to basically go over these things, and then a lot of the time it's just waiting. And there was this thing that I saw on Corridor Crew on YouTube, that was called EB Synth, and
Hmm.
it's a free program, kind of in beta, but it works, and it's it uses a certain amount of stable diffusion, which is pretty common in the AI space nowadays. And I remember I'm like, okay, so if I can do what I need to do for this upcoming thing with 2011 Adobe CS5, Premiere, After Effects, Photoshop, and this incredibly cheap program, I'm like, I can make a movie. The rest is just
Yeah.
time, you know? And
Hmm.
I think like everything, I think it's really easy to just say, okay, just get this plugin and it'll work on everything.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, you have to think tricky, you know?
Yeah. You got to be creative. I think as filmmakers, I think a lot of us go through that where we don't have
Hmm.
the resources, so we have to solve that problem somehow and make it
Yeah.
work. And it sounds like that's what you've been doing. So you've been deeply involved in the Horrorverse series since episode 4, contributing as a co-writer, producer, and director. How does your work in visual effects shape the way you approach storytelling?
It's fantastic question. I'm going to try to stop saying that, but I think they're inextricably mixed. It all, I mean, constantly, my visual effects side, it's really not a different brain to me. It's literally, like I directed one of the shorts, um, and I kind of help Aaron direct a lot of the work. Like I'm kind of an unofficial second unit all the time, I guess. And but
Mm-hmm.
we all are, if you know how Aaron works. But a lot of it comes down to, like, for Bullet, which was the episode with the wonderful Carl Covington and the amazing Jasmine Wright Curley. Um, I said, I can bring that to this in the way that we had one episode that Aaron had written where she came down. I don't know if you saw this, Joe, so I'm just going to talk like you didn't.
Evan.
But there's a moment where she has a shield that kind of pops up out of nowhere. That it's like an energy shield, and he had asked me to do that effect, and I did
Nice.
it, and I'm like, well, that's fun. And then when we got to the point where I was doing mine, I'm like, let's just do it where she has that all the time, you know? And
Yeah.
we were like, we're going to make a John Woo episode, except for she's going to have the shield and Bullet will have the gun. And I think that was one of those moments where the storytelling part of my brain should have told me, or the smart part of my brain should have told the storytelling brain, maybe don't make it to where you have 5 minutes of solid special effects in a 15-minute movie. And we did it,
Yeah.
but it was all
Yeah.
because I wanted to do this thing. And,
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do it. And I'm like, well, I should have taken 6 months to do it instead of 1 month to get the whole thing done.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't learn those things till you do them,
Well,
you know?
that's you're going down that path. What I was kind of wondering is like, when you're writing a script or you're writing a scene and working things out, and you imagine what could be, do you in your head go, I'm the FX guy, I could do that," or do you go, "Oh, that might be a little too complicated. Let's back it up a little bit."
No, oh, I wish it's the first one. It's the
It's the
first one
first one.
every
You're
time.
like, "I can do that."
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll come up with something, and I will say, I now hear Chuck and Aaron and my wife in the back of my brain going, "Steve, do you need to do this?" And and I try to tell it, I try to tell my brain, okay, maybe we shouldn't do that. But like, for example, the Awaken the Darkness movie, we didn't go as nuts, but we certainly have more in that than we did in the others, except for Bullet because I went stupid with that one. But um, we just I tried to stick with what do we want to do, and then at least I could say, well, if I write it, I can do it. I won't write something I literally can't do. And like with the Hunt, there's much more effects than there was in Awaken. Um, but I don't think anything like is probably once again as far as Bullet or um, unattainable. Like I don't think there were any that we were stretching so far that I thought we'd break it or it would take too long.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would love to go back and do Bullet now, but it would take me 6 months and we've already moved on.
Yeah.
But you know,
What about
um,
like horror? There's a lot of blood, right? So is that
yeah.
practical or is that special effects
Uh,
or both?
there is not as much blood in the horror verse as I personally would like. I don't love digital blood.
Hmm.
I do almost all the ones that we have in the movies now, but I really try, and this is the problem, you know how it is. Like you do a special effect in person, and it's like doing 3 shots of something could take hours. Whereas
Yes.
when and I think we've had digital blood in some way in every one that I've done, um, and that I've worked on, I should say, not that I've done them. But I'm in a perfect world. I would love never to do digital blood at all. Um,
Is that because of the
and
realism, the way it looks?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think unless you've like we did one head stomp effect in the tank short,
Yeah.
where it was, and it's cheesy. Like it's not meant to look perfect by any measure. But we did a thing where we did a watermelon stomp, and then
Hmm.
we had it in the place of we laid the guy in, and I would rather do that to where there's a certain practical element anytime. And we try. There's very few shots where we're genuinely like full on creating the blood, and I think if you watched all of our films, you could see the ones that because they're not great. The digital blood kind of sucks unless you have way too much time to do it really well.
What about like gunfire? Are you guys using blanks or is that all digital?
All digital, all digital. Yeah, I, in a perfect world, the one we do not exist in, I would love to, but I think the amount of safety, it's like in the medical field, we always talk about a risk benefit factor. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, the risk would be this. And unless we have $1 million to have a proper amount of stunt crew, and this is that nurse brain too, where I'm like, if I ever had somebody really get hurt on one of my sets that I ever worked on, I don't care if it was me putting them there or not, I would feel like a huge failure because it's not worth that. You know, now it just getting hurt, like Peter Anthony, who lovely man, love him dearly. He got hurt, and it wasn't even really anything we did. He just
Hmm.
got hurt on the set, and I felt terrible. Um, yeah. So yeah, I just when it comes to stunts, I'm always the one going like, hey, could we not? Could we figure out a digital way to do this? And he's like, no, I got this, man. Like,
Yeah.
Aaron and Chuck are usually the ones, and they're older than I am by a bit, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll just do it. Like, okay, you're stupid. I'm telling you not to, but
I'm
okay,
just gonna close my eyes and turn my head. Uh,
yeah.
I think you kind of answered this on Universal Opera. It's been a passion of yours since 2014. How has your vision for the sci-fi rotoscope animation evolved over the years? Because I know technology changes rapidly. Um, does that help you enhance the narrative?
You know, since we're talking about it, I'll go in from the beginning. So what happened originally was that it was typical typical modern statement here, but I'm like, when I was in nursing school, I had done the whole starving artist thing, and I was kind of bummed out that I was no longer doing the starving artist thing, but at least I was eating at that point. And was really bummed out going to nursing school. It was not a good place for me. So I'd start drawing whatever would make me happy for 5 seconds at a time. Literally, the whole thing came from that. It was literally just drawing one thing after another to make me sane. And then it became, should I do something with this? I feels like something. Um, and then I had a lot of, like, I had one job where I was working at the time during school where it was a 19-hour shift looking
Oh,
after people in their home. And so I'm like,
oh,
I had a lot of time to think. Um,
yeah.
and it turned into a thing. And then I was like, okay, I had a 5 movie opus by the end of it that I had written. And I was like, okay, how do I do it? You know, do I do it as a comic book? And that I was thinking motion comic at the time. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those, but it was a thing for like a year and a half,
Hmm.
where people were basically just animating really good looking comic art. There's like a semi-famous one of Watchmen where they took the literal comic book and cut it up and all that, and it did okay at the time. But like after 2 years, it was gone. Nobody did it anymore.
Hmm.
And then I was like, you know what I should do? Because I enjoyed the movie Fire and Ice and Lord of the Rings from the late 70s and like the rotoscope movies. I'm like, what if I did it that way, but digitally? So it didn't look as good, you know,
Yeah.
because, I couldn't afford to have 100 animators in a building working on it like in the old days. And then I kind of kept just thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And then I was like, okay, well, there's a cartoon filter in After Effects that I got on my computer. And I'm like, good storytelling, I genuinely believe tends to win out, no matter the medium. I mean, I give 100 examples there of
Yes.
you're like, you couldn't really do it, but you did it, and it's fun. Bad Taste is a good example. You're like weird puppets and shit.
Yeah.
And but then I saw that Corridor Crew video where it was literally tracking a frame. So in their case, and they did one, it was like anime rock, paper, scissors. It's fun. Watch it on YouTube. Not you specifically, Joe. Live your
Yeah.
life as you like. But anybody listening. Um, so it was really fun because they did it with actual humans with green screen, and I was like, shit, that's opera. I can do. And all they do is literally at the time. Now, I don't agree if you want to get geeky about this, like the AI thing,
Yeah.
generative AI compared to, just using stable diffusion on your own stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, I have no problem with that. I'm like, if it's my stuff and I'm just using technology to push it out. They did at the time though, they used generative AI. I want to say using Vampire Hunter D, which was an anime film.
Hmm.
And what they did was they used the art from that and they put it into stable diffusion, and then they started generating the art based upon that.
With
Uh,
permission.
no, of course not. Yeah. So, and I'm like, I remember seeing it at the time, and I was like, I was really getting up on my high horse about it, But I'm like, I feel I could have a 2-hour conversation about just AI.
Yeah.
But
That's
I
my
remember
last
the time.
question for you. So,
Oh, I would love to. I can't wait. Um, so, but at the time I was like, oh, that is so friggin' cool, but it just seems wrong.
yeah.
And I'm like, but the theory's still sound. If you can take like in EB Synth, which is literally just essentially a high class tracking program, where you could take like a photo of me right now, turn
Hmm.
it into a piece of art, and then it'll generally not very well, and this is why it takes a lot of artistry, but it'll move it, as long as I'm not doing a lot of three-dimensional movements, it'll track it.
Okay.
Um, and so you can really, I mean, you can't do like one frame for a whole second, especially if anybody's moving a whole lot, but you could do one frame for, 3 frames a second, maybe, and
Hmm.
it will do a fantastic job at the in-betweening. Um, and I'm like,
Interesting.
that I can do. So,
I'm trying to think if that's the same program I heard about where you took a photo and all you needed was a photo and then you can animate that actual person doing things.
yeah,
It sounds similar, but I don't know if that's the
there's
same.
a lot of them. Like there's like Puppet Warp, I think, in After Effects. It does something really similar to
Hmm.
that. This doesn't do it quite as well though, because you're really not cutting out, say, for example, the head by itself, the arm by itself is in a more traditional
Okay.
animation pipeline.
Yeah.
Um, this really does. So, like, say for and this is one. I love you, Joe. We're getting nice and geeky here.
Yeah.
But like, say for example, if you did this shot on my face right now, and I were to draw a version of it, scan it into the computer, and then I turn it into the video. I tell it map this. If I'm doing this slight movements,
Yeah.
it's going to track it very well. It could do it for 5 seconds.
Okay.
But as soon as I turn my head that way,
It
It doesn't
loses
know
you.
what to do.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, so it takes a lot of masking, and actually, we're this year, fairly soon. The wonderful and talented Martin Lewis is working on some costumes for me. We're going to be getting together. I've done some tests with it with another film that I was going to do with a buddy of mine from Thailand. Hi, Raymond. And we had done some prior work, kind of getting an idea if we could do that without green screen, just literally mapping art onto film.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it would, when we looked at it, it was just insane. Like not doing it with green screen, it was way too difficult. But
Mm.
we understood the process then.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, it'll be a pain, but any film is. So
Let me ask you something. I know and I understand the cost that is involved, but I'm just going to say a few things and I want to see what your reaction is. Have you heard of Adobe Animation,
help me out. When you say like, do you mean like using
the
a
program? There's actually a
oh no,
program.
is that Adobe Animate?
Animate, yeah.
Yeah, I've never used it.
Okay. That
Yeah,
does the same thing. Tracks your
does
face.
it?
Yeah. You could draw whatever you want and it'll track your face and make it move.
Yeah,
The second thing is I have a feeling that upgrading is going to be in your near future, but I'm just saying
you are correct. You are absolutely correct.
when it
Yeah.
comes to masking, so you've heard of DaVinci Resolve. They
Hmm.
just came out with version 19. It can mask without a green screen. Just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, and a lot of this, I mean, the process that I'm talking to you about right now
Yeah.
is the simplest possible description we can do of the process. I mean, the amount of other programs that we're using, it's going to be a lot of, I mean, it's fun because we get to do things like actually shooting real people in costumes,
Yeah.
using puppets, all kinds of fun stuff, doing miniatures for ships and backgrounds and stuff. But the amount of computer programs of varied types
Yeah.
are, I mean, uh, Resolve's in there for sure. We're using Resolve,
Yeah.
just for the masking ability alone. And
Sure.
I already have Studio and stuff, so that's
No.
helpful. Um,
You're a piece
you
of cake
know,
that you're there. You're there.
yeah, yeah. So it's those are I'd say the big one is EBSynth was the reason I'm hitting on that is just because when I saw that I was like free program
Yeah.
can run in instances. I could run 5 different versions of it on the computers or many computers for free,
Yeah.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if we end up finding something when we get into it in volume, um, I imagine we'll be throwing other programs in there. I am a Blender extreme noob.
I want to learn
I
it so bad.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work with my neural pathways, I think. So it's always kind of like pulling teeth whenever I really get into it. I learned Lightwave back in the day, if
Mm.
you ever touched that.
Mm-mm.
A lot of TV, VFX, we're done with that. But I never got great at it. But it's a lot of different stuff. You know how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I took a 3ds Max class in college back in the day with the thought I've always wanted to be a graphic designer, so that's where that drove me.
Yeah,
But it was the thought of, hey, I want to work for a gaming company. I want to make video games. Until the instructor said, so this is what's going to happen is when you get a job at a video game place, they're going to have you make a tree, and they're just going to have you keep on making that tree, and you're going to make
yeah,
a different tree, and that's all you're going to be doing for the next 5 years. And I was like,
yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Nope. I
But I
I
wish I still
I
had the skill
I
set.
I would imagine you might be a little younger than me, but I think if I was born 5 years later, uh, I probably would have gone into games instead, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I was born in '80, but like I feel like if I was just yeah 5 or 10 years a little bit older, I probably would have got into game design instead. But I fell in love with movies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like Lightwave. One of the reasons I wanted to learn that was because I remember I had a buddy of mine at the time was working at Interplay, and they were using it on what was it? There was like Starfleet Academy Klingons or something, and I was like,
Oh,
I know that program. I
yeah.
could work on that. But yeah, I think game design is like the new films. I don't know if film will be around near as much in another 10 or 20 years, but I'd be curious to find out. Hopefully I'll
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah, the
Um,
story on the games, those the epilogues and stuff are just they're like, wow. I mean, this
yeah.
is a movie on its own. What when it comes to genres though, now you had said before that you did a little bit of makeup
hmm
artistry. What was your favorite genre at that time, or was it just the basics, or was it any kind of like the horror verse type stuff?
One of the things that got me into film originally was seeing the original Batman. I say the original, and not the one with Michael Keaton
Michael Keaton,
and
yeah,
yeah. Um, and I was 9 years old, and I saw it, and I'm like, I'm doing that shit.
yeah.
And I saw the Joker. I remember it was the makeup that they did on Jack Nicholson, and I was like, I'm learning that, and that stuck around for quite a while. And I think I just enjoyed the idea of doing characters, making characters that have a reaction. Um, but that was I'm a big comic book geek, big comic book geek. I don't read near as many as I used to, but it used to be my jam from the age of 0 to 35.
Nice.
You know,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, I think comic books. If I would have probably ended up going into the movie business in earnest in my mid 20s, I probably would have aimed towards comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Universal Opera, like as much as it is kind of a Fifth Element ish kind of world, I'm like it's my take on smushing together Star Wars and all of the Marvel and DC universe and
Yeah.
all of the things that I love all together, big robot movies and that kind of stuff.
I love Fifth Element. That
Me
was
too.
definitely one of those strong ones for me.
Oh man. Yeah.
What when it comes to your visual effects and design, are there new assets that you well, let's just use the force shield idea that you had, right? Do you ever go out and look for what's out there as far as templates or what do you call it? Pieces, plugins, anything that you can emulate and just kind of put it in?
You usually it comes down to matters of scale.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this one that I'm working on right now, I had Chris that I was talking about who I'm doing the work for in his film. He was like, you should try out Saber. And it's an older plugin. It's from Video Copilot back in the day,
Yeah.
but it does some really interesting work. And then what it comes down to is in that case, I was like, okay, I'll play with it a little bit. And then from that, I kind of came up with a little bit of a take on what we could do.
Yeah.
Usually it's the other way around though.
Okay.
Usually it's like, uh, if I can, a lot of the times if it's something I'm coming up with, it's really going in my brain, what is it that I want to see? And then I'll start to pick around how could I get there. And if it's something, usually I'll try to think of a way not to use assets.
Yeah.
Um, but if I needed to, especially for scale, and if it wasn't too expensive, because I'm once again a cheapskate,
Yeah.
if it wasn't too expensive, I would probably use a plugin or something. But a nice part about using a program that I've had for 11 plus, no God, 13 years, um, is that I know it pretty well at this point. So I can usually get within the realm of and bullshit my way through the rest of it. So
So
you
you're
know,
you're you're creating from scratch.
often, often,
Wow. That's
yeah,
talent right
but
there.
well, it's. I think it just comes down to it. Like templates, a lot of the time, like I don't know if you use After Effects much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's like I like templates, but most of the time I'm going to try to, and I used them more when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just break them. I just figure out what they were doing with it, and then I'd kind of work backwards
Right.
because most of the time they're just using whatever's under the hood in a different way slightly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like I think if I was younger or if it's like, Aaron will throw me a template every once in a while and I'm like, I can do it. I'm fine. Thank you though. You know, um,
Yeah.
and but yeah, if I can come up with it by myself, it's easier if I don't know if you're building the building blocks by itself. It's easier. It's like programming. You're like if you're taking somebody else's programming, it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to pull something out and have it not break.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're pretty much decoding the code and then
yeah,
going, okay, I know how you did that. I'm gonna do it this way.
Yeah,
and you're
and I'm
making
sure I
movies.
have blind spots that I'm not even sure about. I'm sure there are things that if somebody asked me a specific thing that just isn't in my wheelhouse and I've never done before,
Yeah.
I would then have to Google it and figure that out because it's something I haven't done. But you know how it is when you're used to doing something, you're like, oh yeah, it's a cinch. I just do it with A, B, C, and D. And then somebody's like, what about X? And you're like, I haven't done X. I'll figure that one out. Uh,
There's an X.
there's an X. Why would you do X? A, B, C, and D are working fine. you know?
Did you
So
ever, with like certain films that the horror verse, any kind of horror genre, if there's like a stabbing, have you ever had to do that?
yes. Yes. Not only did I have to do that, we had one, and this was one of my favorite people in the film community of the Pacific Northwest is a man named Tyler Darko. I don't know if you've ever met him.
Haven't.
Lovely man. Oh, he's the best. He's the kind of guy like Aaron, where you're like, this dude cheers up people and pushes them on just by existing. And me, I'll be in a corner, being like, we're never going to get this shit done. And they're just over there partying. Anyway, we killed Tyler in Awake in the Darkness, and there's a moment where Michael Myers, I'm not giving it's been out for 6 months, guys. I'm sorry about the spoilers, but he gets stabbed, and the thing is like the way it did it. And I remember I was like crestfallen when I actually saw the footage because he stabs him, and I'm like, okay, I can do a stab, that's fine. But the problem is he like clicked and then let go, like as if the knife stayed in the guy. So I'm
Oh,
like, oh great, now I have to figure out how to track a knife to his body as he's like falling over in a extreme long shot
oh my gosh.
and anyway. So yes, short answer is yes, and it's not my favorite thing to do
Yeah,
because I think that's why I try to be subtle about those kind of things. I'm like, if you try to call attention or you're showing a bunch of, like we were talking about digital blood,
yeah,
like if you end up having a shot where somebody gets hit and then you're like, they're constantly bleeding or something, it really calls attention to itself. When in real life, most of the time, I mean, I've seen one, I'm a nurse.
mm-hmm.
I've seen stabbing victims, like,
Yeah,
it's like they either bleed like a stuck pig or they don't. And
yeah,
I'm like, well, I'm going to put a shirt spot right there and that's going to track. I'm going to track it usually by hand because Aaron loves to use handheld.
yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
and sometimes I'll beg him, and he will do it. He's a lovely guy, but he'll do a lockdown for me
Yeah.
every once in a while. But he don't like it. It'd be the first thing he bitches about. Why do we need that tripod? We don't need a tripod.
Well, that's what I was wondering because your background as a nurse, you see all the wounds, you see this. Sometimes you'll see gore and stuff, and you're like, okay, this looks more realistic. So you have that
Yeah,
advantage versus someone just going, I'm just going to throw some blood on it, and that should be good
yeah.
enough, right?
And, yeah, and we've done a few that were particularly tricky. Logan Cannon, I hope he's watching. He's awesome too. He's from I believe the Portland area. God, I hope I'm right. I love him dearly too. But we killed Logan like for reals. I don't if you see it, like there's like a big shot where he gets stabbed right up through the
Nice.
you know, into camera. And that one, it's probably one of the better looking knife blood shots that we did. And it was really tricky. Actually, that was one of the first ones I did EB synth on. So I
Oh.
did a thing where I'm like, okay, so I did one really good Photoshop of the blood being patterned roughly correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to do the tracking of the knife and all that as he's moving around, which was the harder part of it. But then I just kind of made the mat of it kind of spread out on his chest. And that one was fun. I ain't gonna lie,
Yeah.
that was fun.
So he just acted it out, and you stuck in the digital asset coming
Yeah,
out of
we
his
did a
chest.
little bit. We did like
You had a prop.
Michelle Munoz, who's amazing. She's like the my favorite makeup artist in the world. She did a little bit of blood, and I remember it being a little low. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, that's going to cause me all kinds of problems. Please go and put a little higher. But there was like a single tracking spot, I guess you could say, right there with his chest hair. So I
Yeah.
did have that at least. But like,
Oh, he didn't have a shirt on.
no, he had like a tank top.
Oh,
He had
okay.
like a
Okay.
oh God, I hate it, but the wife beater.
Yeah.
He had a wife beater on,
Yeah.
and I remember it like came up right next to the top, and I'm like, dude, that's gonna make it hell. You got to go back, put that up 2 inches higher, please. Um, and So yeah, we had a little bit, but then it was like a lot of the rest of it. Cause I'm like, okay, if it's coming through right through the heart, right through all that, I'm like, it's gonna bleed.
So you
So
don't
we did
use
the best we could.
you don't
It was
use any
fun.
green gaffer's tape or anything like that to do your markers.
Sometimes not often.
Yeah,
The thing is like, I don't know if you've really done any green screen work in earnest. Like, you get so much spill, and usually the spill becomes its own big problem.
right.
So if you can be smart about it by like, there's a few shots in hindsight, like the Michael Myers and fire shot. If we could have done a green screen on that, that might have been better.
Mm.
That's not one of my favorite tracking mats because literally, you know how it is. Somebody moves slightly, and the curves will move a little bit. And Rotobrush in CS5 was in its inception. Um, so anyway, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't use it too often because, like I said, you're fighting the green screeny of it, the spill, and yeah.
So what now we move into your posters, your uh-oh. When it comes to your creating posters, your experience in visual effects, how do you capture the essence like when you're starting to design promotional material, do you find a lot of joy in creating the posters because you've done some of the visual effects as well?
So yes, very seldom, and this is like once again that control bit. Every once in a while, I find myself out of my depth on the posters. I understand my own limitations to an extent, but I tend to be like, I'm stupid in the way that if somebody asks me nicely, I'm probably not going to say no. Um, and like, for
Now everybody
example,
knows.
yeah, for real. I seriously was gonna be like, Chuck, Aaron, anybody ask me for anything, they're gonna ask you, buddy, because I'm bad at that. Um, but I did a poster for him, for Chris Shern recently for his film, VFX, and, he was like, yeah, like comic book style. And I remember I was like, oh, yeah, I can do comic book style art. That's fine. Yeah, no problem. And then I didn't know what he meant was when we got into it was Marvel poster style,
Oh.
which is the whole floating head thing. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, how many pieces, how many things do you want on this thing? And then like the more we got into it, we were like ended up at 13 or 14. And I'm like, out of my depth. The ability for a really competent graphic designer, I'm sure as you know, I don't know if you've done any poster design, but yeah, like to do something with that level of complexity and not have it turn to a muddy mess at the end of it, I did my absolute level best. Um, but that's one where I'd be like, yeah, maybe get a real graphic designer. I'll paint it for you after, but
Yeah.
I hope you like it. I don't charge much. So, yeah. So, yeah, but besides that, like on the one that I did recently for The Hunt, I don't know if you've seen that one, but The Hunt,
Yeah.
I got to literally tell Chuck, who's plays Jason, and he's friggin' great in it. Really, I mean, genuinely, he does a great Jason Voorhees. Um, I was like, dude, on the rest of them, I'm always taking film stills and then just kind of blowing them up, repainting them, whatever. And in that one, I was like, okay, I'm going to draw this. I'm going to draw a really ghetto version of it, and I need you to just recreate it for me. And he did. And then I got to do that. And it was really simple, so it's a pretty simple poster. And it's one of my favorites. I really enjoyed that
Well, it
one.
looks like an
So,
oil painting, is what it looks
yeah,
like.
yeah, it's all in Procreate on my iPad, but
Oh, very nice.
yeah, and the other nice part is I do that anywhere. I'm not locked to my computer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really nice. Like I take my iPad anywhere if I'm waiting for an appointment, which I often am. Yeah, I could do that.
Well, that's when it comes to budget, you mentioned I'm not charging you very much. What are you being compensated for this, or is this just a passion thing that you're doing?
For the horrorverse, I don't take anything. If we end up getting any amount of payment, I don't want to get too much into the weeds. You know how
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
like, but yeah, we do it genuinely for the dear love of it. When we make things, say for Tubi, I think there will probably be more contractual obligations and such. But I mean, with fan films, or what I told him is I'm not a big fan of fan films.
Hmm.
Back when I'm bless them, I'm not. But I was like, unauthorized sequels. I'm going to treat it as an unauthorized sequel. And when we did that, it was where you're like, if you put too much into contracts, you're really kind of lining yourself up for litigation. You know, if
Right.
you make too much money
Right.
or whatever, this is for my worry wart side of my brain.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, we're going to create more problems than anything. So we don't worry, that we don't make too much money. But like when I'm doing a poster for somebody, I usually don't even discuss it. I'm like, if I don't do it for people that don't like. And I'm
That's a
like,
plus.
yeah, yeah,
It's a win-win
you
then.
yeah. I'm like, hey, at the end of it, if you toss me some cash, but if I
Yeah.
really worried about it, I would end up where I was in, working on films the first time where I was like, shit, I'd rather go be a nurse. Um, so, you know what I mean?
That bad. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting because, but part of it's like when you're doing visual effects, and you always hear about budget restraints or constraints that you
hmm
can't do this, you can't do that. But in your realm, you can do whatever you want. There are no constraints, right? When it comes to the budget.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, there are nothing but limits, really. For the amount of money. I mean, I think on the crowdfunder that we did for this, and I thought it turned out very well for what we did. I think we made 10,000 or something, but like, you can on a normal movie, 10 times that would end up being the craft services budget.
Right.
So, we didn't have to worry as much about like, hey, if we're going to rent a location, we can actually do that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty much like we were like, well, we have a forest that we know nobody looks at. Let's go do it there.
Yeah.
We have these amazing actors who will come hang out with us and do stuff as long as we're not dicks to them.
Yeah.
Um, it's worked out.
What what's your time frame as far as creating visual effects? How much time do you need? How much time do they allow you? Or is there ever like a rush or a
Yeah,
pressure?
yeah, not often with the horror verse. Um, I remember like the one I'm working on right now, I have a bit of a deadline on that, and I don't enjoy deadlines. Who does? But it's also nice because you're like, I have an end date, no matter what, if I can get it done. And I'm anal retentive about deadlines. But like for Bullet, I remember Aaron, and I think this is one of the moments where he's like, okay, if Steve says something, I can trust him on it. I remember him saying, "How the hell do you think you're going to be able to do this?" And I'm like, "I will do it. I would double dog dare you. You said you wanted to get it done in a month. I'll get it done in a month."
Hmm.
And that was more me doing a dare to myself,
Yeah.
but I did it. But most of the time, it's like I could on our stuff, I could take as long as I want, but I don't want to.
Yeah. Tell me your workflow when it comes to doing special effects, visual effects, when it comes after you're done with the film. How does that workflow happen? At what step is visual effects at?
So I have kind of because I typically am my own boss in almost every sense. I mean, I'm usually the hardest one, specifically with Aaron and Chuck. I'm probably the hardest to make happy on the work that I'm doing. So what will typically happen is I will do kind of in runs. I do the quick, dirty, shitty version of it,
Hmm.
of whatever that effect is, kind of bashed in, and then I'll do a cleanup pass. And usually at that point, it's probably decent enough, And then what I'll do is usually a third pass. Um, that would make me somewhat happy. Where a good example is, and I won't say who it was, but somebody was getting choked by Jason in the newest
Hmm.
movie. And I remember the first pass. So, what the trick was is, and I hope I'm not telling any stories out of school if anybody watches it or if Aaron's grumpy or Chuck's grumpy about it. But anyway,
This is coming out way
yeah,
after,
yeah.
so
So, so the trick was that Chuck playing Jason held somebody up and they were standing on a good sized stump.
yeah.
First pass was, getting it into the computer, wiping out the stump. And so the second pass, though, so what happened was it ended up looking like the one foot was standing on a stump and the other one was, moving around, and
Yeah.
looked like somebody standing on an invisible stump.
Yeah.
And then so what I had to do for the second pass to make it, to where we were more happy with it was, I erased that leg, the one that was standing on the stump, and then just kind of used the other leg as a version to dangle, so it was holding. In a third one that we didn't do, I would probably mat out the whole thing and give her just a little bit of lateral and horizontal movement just to really sell the idea that she wasn't perfectly standing, but
Yeah.
I didn't go that far in that one because it looked pretty decent, you know. So it's
Turn.
really like that. That's usually my real, it. I have not worked for somebody more anal than I am. So yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
I love that though. I mean, that to me it just sounds like it's the trick of the trade. It's like this.
Yeah,
Oh, that's how they. I always love behind the scenes. Like, how
yeah,
did they
me,
do that? How did they make that work?
yeah. And it's always that's actually why I do it. I don't have like the magic trick sense of it. I'm not a performative person, but I do enjoy making a trick that fooled people.
Oh yeah,
Like that's the best.
yeah.
So that's typically kind of what I'm going for. When somebody will be like, "Oh, you don't want to take credit," I'm like, "No, I took credit when you enjoyed it. That was it. I'm good." You know. So,
I wanted to ask you this film that I don't think it is part of the CCC group, but it's Assassin's Code.
oh no, no, don't blame that on them. So they,
Don't blame that. I've never seen it, so I don't know what. But
no,
you did visual effects on that.
I did. So that was I was talking about a mentor. So I had when I went to the illustrious Long Beach City College in Long Beach, California, which is where I was born. Um, I had a film teacher, film one teacher. I never really went to film school proper ever, but I took a few film classes, and he was my teacher there, and he did what you might, I guess, I don't know, not even coursework. Like he did did a screenwriting group, but he had an MFA in screenwriting, and he was a good, great, genuinely wonderful screenwriting teacher. I always said he should take. He did his. I'll tell you his name. Lawrence Riggins, and he had a 12-column theory about how to do a film, and it's really for the most part kind of your Blake Snyder or
Mm, like
oh my
Save
god,
the Cat.
what's yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Is that Blake Snyder? Am I miss?
Yeah.
Or Robert McKee? Like kind of taking a 3 or 4 act structure, but he had it a little more detailed. And I remember a lot of people would find that too. Um, it would just cramp them down too much. Like they'd feel like they couldn't play within that. And I think a lot
Hmm.
of people do that when they first read about 3 act structure or 4 act structure.
Yeah.
They feel like where they're like, no, I got to hit all the points. And I just don't think that's the case. I don't, like with Universal Opera, for example, I mean, by the time I was done, it's more like a 18 act structure, you know,
Hmm.
and it's like, but if you don't mind playing a little bit, and I think that's kind of where that art plays in for me,
Yes.
where I'm like, well, if you don't like it, you erase it and you try something different. You only need structure when it sucks, um,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
And they're just guides. It's just a guide.
Yeah. And uh, anyway, so sorry. So Assassin's Code. This is my ADD, man. Sorry. So anyway, so I moved away to Colorado, and then I did what everybody does. You Google all the friends that you have every once in a while, and I saw that he was making a film like a month and a half later in Denver, which was like 30 minutes from where I was at the time, and I got laid off from a big
Mm.
job that sucked. So
Serendipity.
at that point, at that point, I hit him up and I was like, "Hey, just let me do your storyboards. I can do that on unemployment." And so we kind of started working together that way. And then, as often does in the mid budget, like the small but genuinely small budget, like that $1 million budget, I feel like for every one that I've ever worked on, it almost turns into a mafia movie at a certain point. Where
Got it.
Yeah. But like where like somebody decides they're like, I'm not giving you the footage, and then they run off or whatever, and then like that's what happened on this film.
Oh, you mean that type of mafia movie? I
Yeah,
thought you were making a movie about a mafia.
no, like where you're like you can't just not do the thing you did. And so anyway, so the guy who was going to edit, he quit or whatever, and I was like, shit, I'll edit it. I don't know any better than to say that. Um, and so I ended up editing it, and the thing was they had only shot 75% of the film. Um, and so basically my job on that was
Wait. I'm gonna pause you. 75% of the film? They've only shot 75% of the film.
yes. And
That's it.
and it was okay. So this was one of the earlier red films, red camera
Yeah.
at the time. It was like I think it was the red one that we shot it on. It wasn't even like the Mysterium or anything. It was like not long after they came out, and was cool though. I don't know if you ever knew the name, but the guy Rick Waite, he used to work with Walter Hill back in the day. He shot
Hmm.
it on like an early red, so it was really cool. I got to hear a bunch of cowboy bullshit stories from him, and he ended up passing a few years later. He was awesome. But anyway, that was the best part. But the editing sucked because I had to like they did a low ratio 75% of the movie, so it's not like we had the ability to. Um, when I got to the film, they ended up doing like a 3 or 4 day shoot after that to shoot a little bit more, but it was just to stitch it together, just to like go, if we can get these shots, just stitch together the last bit, and we did it. But it when you hear what I've said now, don't watch it. But if you ever should watch it, you'll be like, oh, that's it. Uh,
Well, I'm a little bit flabbergasted because I'm like 75% of the film. So you have a story, but you're only going to show 75% of it. Like, obviously they filmed the ending. I'm assuming, right? They got that in the can. No,
well, so what they did
like
was it was supposed. Okay, here's the thing: it's like it was supposed to be a John. I would say like if you mixed up an old style buddy cop film,
yeah,
um, and you mixed it with a no budget John Woo film, which I love John Woo. When he said that, I was like, I'm in.
yeah.
And so then what he did was they wrote a script, and it was really basic in most ways. But anyway, so when they shot the 75% they had a good sized budget on that 75%. But then what they did was they really, like anything that would take too long, you could tell whoever the people, and I'm not going to out anybody, but the people who worked on it, they were like, yeah, we don't have time to do that. And they got to the ending where you're like, okay, here's the villain and the hero, and they're supposed to have a fight scene.
Yeah.
And when you watch the film, you can see where they look at each other and they hold up guns. And you can tell it's supposed to be like a fireball ballet of movement and fight. And it's almost like they just went like, yeah, we can't film tomorrow. So, and I remember like when I did this, because they were like, we're never getting back the villain again. And he's a fantastic actor, a guy named Min Soo Choi. And he's like a Korean I don't know, like they're De Niro kind of, probably not, but you know how everybody goes like, oh, it's the Harrison Ford of this. But anyway, he really did have that level of ability. That was fantastic, but they couldn't get him back, even for the after shoots. So I was like, well, they hold up guns at each other. We're gonna try to go artistic, and I'm gonna go white frame, and then we're gonna cut to the next scene, and that's what is in. That's all
Wow.
there is, and it is I enjoy it usually drunk, and I don't mean tipsy. I mean I can't watch it like, and it's one of those things where like when you're 25 or whatever it was at the time, you know
Yeah.
how when there's something in your craw and you're like, this is something I'm going to make work, and you will
Right.
put everything you have into it. That was my film to do that on, and so I worked on it for like a year and a half total. Between storyboarding and editing and trying to help out the last bits of the movie, and it came out. It came out. So I can say it. I won, kind of.
They distributed it
Hmm.
like
Yeah,
theaters.
I want to say like Sony or something. No. It was Screen Media, and they had like a distribution deal with somebody for real though. And
Wow.
I saw it as a DVD in Walmart, which was like, I'm like, I win. I win. It's in Walmart. It's in Walmart.
Holy smokes! Well,
Yeah,
hey, that's a huge win. I mean,
yeah,
come on.
yeah.
I think that's a dream for all of us, right? Hey, our
Right.
stuff's being sold at Walmart.
I
It's
got to
there.
meet Martin Cove. I got to meet Richard Mole, you know, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I win. Can I quit now? And I should have. But no, but it was an interesting experience, but it was also very heavy on the heart and blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah. But yeah, I can watch it. It's I think free on YouTube, but no one should. So
I'll
yeah,
take a. I'll take
the
a.
second
I like
movie,
the poster. I saw the poster, and I was
yeah,
like, oh. And I was wondering if you made the poster. That's part
no
where I
no
was
no, I
gonna
didn't
go.
do that
So
one.
yeah,
And that one actually turned out quite well. You could tell whoever they got was very good. I only started doing the posters for the Horrorverse, so that's like only within the last few years.
I see. Well,
Yeah.
you did a good job. What now? I do see A Christmas Carol, and I
With
interviewed Rose
uh-huh.
Kreider.
Hmm.
So tell me about that. You did the special effects on that. How did that go?
So that one there's really not much to speak about. I told her I'd be happy to do it. We had talked and I kind of just waiting. Um and I think I wouldn't be surprised if I don't. I want to say the special effects. So what? It's one of those things, and I'll speak in generalities. I'm not speaking about Rose's movie specifically at all. But you know how sometimes, like when you're in pre-production, you'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, you know what we could do is all this kind of stuff," and then you get to it, and you're like, "We don't need that."
Yeah.
You know, and so I wouldn't be shocked if the editors end up doing that. And she's a sweet lady. You've met her.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wish it the absolute best, and I'm still here if she does. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I think it's I think they're always saying, serve the story
yeah,
and don't lead with the visual effects to kind of get that done. Knowing the CCC group, did I say that three times?
yeah,
CCC Entertainment
you
Group.
got it.
They make documentaries. Have you ever
Mhm.
had to do any kind of visual effects in documentaries?
So yes, so on the first film, Samantha Hannah, one of the most wonderful, sensitive souls I've ever met in my life. She's Aaron's wife, and uh, anyway, so she did this one. I'm going to get it wrong. You have the
The
IM
giant
giant. Okay.
Pacific octopus?
I
Yeah.
always say it wrong. I usually say Great Pacific Octopus, and anyway, so you can tell I'm not a biologist. Um, so she had this idea, and it's really a love letter to Tacoma. Like if anybody, I'm not from here originally, but like you watch
Hmm.
that movie, and it makes you feel like you could love Tacoma. And it's
Yeah.
a film about the what is it, Galloping Gertie, and kind of the myth of the giant Pacific octopus. And she
Is
did
it a myth? It's not real?
well. I mean, the giant Pacific octopus. This
Okay.
that is, and there's a bunch of them in the film. But like Galloping Gertie, the idea that there was almost like this kaiju-like version of it that had pulled it down and blah blah blah. That's kind of in there, and they explore that a little bit. But it's really a love letter to Tacoma and a love letter to the beauty of nature. And
Hmm.
what I did on it was at the very end of the film, there is the end titles, and uh, all I really did on it was like a fake bit of water, like a kind of a water environment in After Effects. And then I did, this is one of my only times I ever really used Blender. And you talk about
Mm,
asset. I bought an asset.
nice.
So I bought an octopus and I kind of snazzed it up a little bit. And then I just had a really simple kind of movement of it going past the camera, like almost like as if you were diving, if it would like just
Oh, yeah.
past, because it wasn't great. And by that, I mean my work. And I didn't want you looking at it for too long. So I'm like, we'll go mysterious. So
I'm going to
that's,
blur it out and just kind
yeah,
of go.
it does. I will say, I don't often give myself credit for work, but I'm like, honestly, for what it is, like it's a very quick shot and it kind of works in that storytelling way. But, if you saw the 5 seconds that I had that it was a bit longer, please don't. Um, but and I did that for that one. And it was really just, I mean, I'm not kissing butt here because Sam knows me and she knows I wouldn't. But it was really just cool to be able to put my work into something that I could really respect at that point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I, for all of the ideas that I had, especially when I was younger, about being like a possible millionaire and making larger films and blah 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 blah. Really, I realized after it all came crashing down that all I want to make is something that I can respect and like.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the first times I saw something where I'm like, this is actually good.
Yeah.
And the horrorverse, I love it. I love it dearly. I think it feels like a lot of fun. But like the documentary work we've gotten to do like that, and then I did EB Synth actually. It was kind of a early version of what we'll do with Universal Opera with A Will and a Way. And I helped out with a lot of different things. Like I did the poster design for that, which I was
Mm.
really happy about. That one was a beautiful picture taken by Raymond Parsons. I think that was his. And what I did was I got to paint it over and
Nice.
really change like all the greenery and such behind. But I used EV Synth and kind of turned a bunch of the nicer shots into animated pieces,
Mm.
kind of like animated little. I tried to make it look like a moving painting. So like cow's head and stuff was actually like animating as they moved around.
Like in the credits?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the opening credits on A Will in the Way.
Now, are you making the poster in Photoshop
Uh,
or is that Procreate?
both
Okay.
on that one. So with that one, what I did was there's a lot of back and forth. I it's very easy to lose track,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because you'd be like, this does better at this does better at this.
I love it because I think so. My mom's a painter. I think
Oh,
when
nice.
when you well, old age thing. Uh, and my dad as well. Um, but I think when people look at this, we're like, "Oh, it's an oil painting. It's so beautiful." And that's, I mean, it literally looks like you just painted it. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what it looks like. And so I think it sells it 100%. Yeah. So
And it's not, and I remember there's a couple of artists that I really enjoy. There's one named Bob Peak. Have you ever heard of him?
mm-mm.
So, if, oh my God, Jer Struzen. Jer Struzen's the one everybody tends to know. One of the greatest poster painters of all time. Back to the Future, all of the
Mm,
films, their posters. So, like, usually in my brain when I'm doing them, I'm really aping or trying to do my best aping of him and a guy named Bob Peak who did these really neat ones. Like, all of the Nightmare on Elm Street posters were his. And he would do these really wild, like, streaks of airbrushing and I watch enough YouTube of painting, and of course I'd done a certain amount of it. But it was neat because a lot of the time when I'm doing those things, you think, oh, you're just painting over a picture, but
yeah.
it's really trying to take the thinking of painting and then apply it to that picture. So, really blending edges here and there, so you really look at the ones you've left. And
Yeah.
that one was, I want to say that might have actually been the very first poster I ever did on A Will and a Way. I might be wrong, but I think that might be the first one I did. But it was really neat because that was like my first time doing that.
What other posters? So we have Will and Away. You have The Hunt.
Mm-hmm. Horror,
Um,
I did that one too. Um, See, this is where I told you my memory's terrible. Um,
oh yeah. Yeah.
I
I'm
feel
looking
like
at the
there's another one
horror.
sneaking in there. Oh, okay. This is one that there's people who like it. I do not like it. It is the Origins. It's the Origins poster, and it's the one where there's a bunch of faces on it.
Yeah.
Like that's one where I should have just taken the one that came out and then like said, okay, I'm going to take that as the idea and then redo it from start. You know, uh,
Hmm.
but I didn't because it needed to come out. That one was kind of like we're going to take all of these shorts and put it together into a film, and
Yeah.
it was really kind of a love letter to the cast and everything like that. We got to do
Well,
a poster with their faces on
yeah. I
that.
mean, come on. Any cast member, if you see their face on a poster, like, yeah,
I
that's me. I did it.
and I probably should have just left them as photos. Like the more you start to paint, it's really easy to kind of start making something just look a little less like. I'm not going to beat myself up too much. I'm going to stop right now, Joe. But it's yeah.
That's not my nose. What?
Nobody
T-
has said it to me yet, though, and I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, you're an artist, and it looks
Yeah.
amazing, and that's what really matters. And I think to have the actors' faces on there, I think that's
And
huge,
I love
right?
all of them, and I hope you can see that is that I
Yeah,
care. I was trying so hard.
yeah. What would you say is the most challenging or rewarding project that you've ever worked on, and how did it push you to grow as an artist and a filmmaker?
I'm gonna say probably The Hunt. Probably, I think I did more on that film, and it really, once again, kind of learning the social nature of film more,
Hmm.
um, which is like it's a skill set unto itself. You know, the people. I think I'm fairly strong in people skills. I enjoy talking with people. You can tell I will talk sideways for an hour and a half. But doing that in an environment where you have an artistic ambition,
Hmm.
it's really easy with very little work to turn into the worst enfant terrible like Jim Cameron or whatever, but you ain't paying anybody, you know? So you can't do that. And it's just because what's in your mind isn't necessarily matching up with what's in front of you. And you can kind of turn into an asshole easily, just not really trying to remember that all the people around you are being kind enough to spend their time with you. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think I hope there's never been a moment in my entire career period where anybody felt like that. But I could tell in my brain, as far as the challenging part of it, really trying to make sure that I supported everybody and encouraged people to really bend what I thought I wanted to do with it or what Aaron wanted to do with it. And that's kind of more Aaron's thing. That's how he thinks in general. But that
Hmm.
was a really good learning experience for me to go through that and really let go of some of the worst aspects of my brain.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve, we're going to start docking the ship into the shore. What's the next thing you're working on? Anything that you're working on right now or in the near future?
Okay. I'm going to try to do a lightning round with this then. Um, Universal Opera, we're ramping up for it, so that's going to be a thing. And the general pitch on that, I know I kind of skirted around it, is it'll be a lot of green screen, but it's mostly people in like foam outfits, probably something like you see at a Comic Con,
Hmm.
but then turned into a cartoon. So it's very wild stuff, and I hope everybody who is listening to this, please take a look at the Horrorverse. Feel free. It's all on CCC Entertainment anyway. You'll if you subscribe, I'm sure you will see that when it's coming out. And
Awesome.
I have a lot of. It's incredibly ambitious. After that, we've got Aaron has a project that he's going to be working on very shortly. I love him. I don't want to say anything about that because I don't know if I should. But he's got one that's literally starting next month, and
Wow.
it's going to be a fun ride. We have a couple of movies that are already in motion, mostly being written, and we're really looking forward to those. But a lot of this is going to be a lot of original content. I think after we have one more episode of the Horrorverse coming at some unexplained moment. But I think the nice part is that, God forbid, if I should die suddenly, or if Aaron dies suddenly, if you watch the end of The Hunt, I think you'll feel like it ended.
Mm.
It isn't supposed to,
Yeah.
but it feels like it does. So feel free to watch that anytime. Please,
Yeah.
it'll be out by the time you watch this. So
We'll put the link in the show notes. The are you allowed to submit like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers? Are you allowed to submit those to film festivals?
it's a fantastic question. I would imagine not, unless it were a fan
Because of the,
film specific thing.
yeah,
Um,
because it's an IP, right?
yeah, well, not
Yeah.
only that, I don't, I'm not as versed in the film festival world as I would prefer to be. I think the movies that I made back in the day were never going to end up in a film festival. And by the time I got into the indie crowd, like we're doing fan films, and it's just never kind of been a thing. But I want to say, because it is sort of it's a distribution model kind of onto itself. I would think that a lot of that would probably not fit unless it were a nearly free film fan film kind of festival.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But I
What?
so
Yeah. What is your favorite tech when it comes to film visual effects? What is it, the one thing that you always kind of go back to?
it's so lazy. It's After Effects. I
That works.
it's so nice the amount of ability that you have within it. It's and I know you said this is usually your last question, but you were wanting to ask something about AI. Am I correct?
That is my last
Okay,
question.
cool. I'm looking forward. I love to discuss it. Usually, the only person around is my wife, and she'll be like, "Yeah, I get it, honey. Okay, okay."
Well, I think it's important because I ask actors this question, I ask directors this question, and I had another artist who did storyboards, does comic books, likes to draw,
Tyler,
uses
is that,
Procreate. Tyler, yeah,
yeah.
Tyler Arns. And the question is like, what are your thoughts on AI? How do you feel about
So so many. A lot of them kind of go along the same lines as I was talking about that anime rock paper scissors thing.
them? Mm-hmm.
I think that there is an ethical way. I think honestly, if it's another tool, people will say it's another tool, and I'm like, it is. However, it's a printing press. And if you put money into a printing press, you're making counterfeit and it's illegal. And it should be illegal because the whole thing falls apart otherwise. A lot of the economics of AI fall apart for me. I don't like it. Have I used it? Generative AI? Yes, I have. I won't release any of that. I enjoy it. I keep it for myself. Did I pay for it? Is that a little unethical? Yeah, I don't prefer to do it. I wouldn't do it. I did a little bit of it for concept. I won't say concept art. It's more like concept ideation
Mm-hmm.
with Universal Opera. Like I was just trying to play around with ideas. But the more I did of it, the more uncomfortable I felt. I
Oh,
didn't like
interesting.
the idea that like there were, but at the same time, I'm like a lot of it was Jack Kirby, for example. I did a lot of cues with or whatever you call it, prompts with Jack Kirby, and I'm like, he's been in my brain my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly the greatest comic book artist of all time, Frank Frazetta, possibly greatest painter of all time. Um, they're both dead, but their families still make money off their work to some horrible extent because the publishing industry is horrible. Um, but yeah, it's a strange thing, but I don't think it's much of a gray area as people would like to pretend. And the economic suck of it. I think of like all of the people, they'll say, well, they'll change to other jobs. I'm like, to some extent, and it'll be a very small extent. It's like when they
Mm-hmm.
say, well, cashiers will get replaced by robots, but they'll end up changing to other jobs. I'm like, some percentage of them will, but not everybody. You're going to put people out of work. Um, sorry to go off on a rant, but that is my
No, but so it makes me wonder, like when you put the prompt in there to mimic Jack Kirby, did your images come out similar to his work?
I used it pretty early on. Like I was playing around and I think it came out. I could see being a big Jack Kirby fan, I could see where the influences were there, but it
Mm-hmm.
certainly didn't look like a lost piece of his work.
Yeah.
Frank Frazetta, who has hundreds of paintings and is probably on every lookup known to man, that looked a lot closer.
Hmm.
Because
Interesting.
Jack Kirby's kind of a wilder style too.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to mimic. Frank Frazetta is just really beautiful representation of humans, so
Yeah.
it's probably easier for it to stably diffuse. Um, but yeah, it was neat, and I will say there's little parts of it that like stuck. That I'm like literally the most you'd see in it is for Universal Opera, for example, is maybe the rough shape of a crown. I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's interesting. No, I never thought of that, and it'd be a rough shape. But like I said, the more I got into it, the more I was like, this is wrong.
Did you
For
feel you
for me,
felt it was wrong because did it make it feel like you were stealing from other
yes,
people?
yeah.
Okay.
But once again, everybody's ethics are different. If somebody told me that they had done the same thing, but they kept doing it throughout the process, I don't think I would judge them terribly harshly, especially if they
Mm-hmm.
had no money. Um, but I might judge them more harshly if they were working on $100 million movie and they could have put artists to work. But you could say the same thing of me. I could find other artists to work with. I probably wouldn't pay them because I can't pay me. but it still felt wrong to me.
Mhm.
So that was where I left it.
It's interesting. The I think Disney come out with was some Disney Plus show, and the intro was all done in AI,
Secret Invasion.
right? Yes,
Yes.
and it got a huge hit.
Yeah.
People
And
didn't like that.
there was a couple of movies that got caught for little pieces here and there. And I think the argument now, okay, this is where it gets into the details. I think that Secret Invasion, with the themes that they were trying to portray, I think that was a different thing. I think that they used it as a tool that could really only do what they were trying to portray with that film, which was kind of a fake thing that should be hitting the uncanny valley.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that AI would have been a good process for that. And I think it worked for the. I didn't think it was a great show, all told, but I thought that they were trying to get toward a theme that AI roughly would
Yeah.
correct for. But when you're just using it, like there was this really good movie with David Dalmakian that I heard everybody loved, and I never watched it, but they used it apparently just to like replace a little '70s bumper or something. And I'm like, that's exactly the kind of thing any graphic artist could do. You could
Yeah.
hire on Fiverr for 5 seconds to do that. Why? So I do think it gets into the details, and there is gray areas. I just don't think they're as big as people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pennies are going to add up. I mean, a lot of people turn to AI because it's inexpensive, but it's going to add up. And it's at the end of the day, you're kind of losing the soul
And it's
of it.
unsustainable. From what I understand, a lot of it is, I mean, the amount of computing power. I had a buddy of mine tell me all about this because he's a pretty high level programmer, and he was telling me he's like, it's not sustainable, especially for video. The amount of it's like a lot of large companies, especially when they're startups, they end up getting all this investor money and they have to spend it, but they probably know on some level they're never going to make that back. And when you're using that much processing power to advance the technology, but you're like, this never actually becomes sustainable, you're just playing around with the environment and power and burning up. It's like Bitcoin, bless it. I bumped into a little bit too. I can't judge it too hard.
Yeah.
You're like the foundations are poor. Um, and and I think that's kind of AI too. I think there's certain parts where it would kind of get the point across, but I think in most ways people aren't actually there to just see beauty. I think they want to connect with another human soul.
Yeah.
No, and I don't think it can do that. I'm not sure if it ever will. If it does, I'll eat it. But you know,
What about previs?
okay. I would say it goes under the same kind of ethics.
Yeah.
I think if you have $100 million movie and you can hire somebody to do it, somebody who's got once again a soul, then by all means do that, please, because that person
Mm-hmm.
one needs work. And they're going to bring something to it that's of their own mind. It's not just literally everybody's artistic works all together. Um,
Right.
uh, and now, on the other hand, if somebody was using, like I was talking about, like with Stable Diffusion, but you're like literally paying artists to build a catalog and you're using that catalog continually and it was done in some ethical way, I think that makes it okay. I do think that's okay. I hope that I'm sure they won't, but I would like to see them get paid enough to be commensurate with the amount of work that their work will then do. But I mean, that's artists forever. We always get screwed. Um, you know, but it would be nice. It would be nice to have at least like if they did, not, and I think they did actually. If they animated rock paper scissors, they literally hired a few artists to make a bunch of pieces for Stable Diffusion, then to extrapolate. And I'm like, that's cool. That's at least you're paying somebody to put their soul and heart work into it. And Universal Opera would be the same way because it'd be my work for the most part being drawn directly over people that I shot with a camera.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the ethics are important, but they're a pain in the ass. Uh, so
It's because we're human.
yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for being on the Downing Cut. How can people reach out to you?
Oh, I am on Facebook. You can look me up by Steve Eaton. Um, you can bump into me at either CCC Entertainment Group on YouTube, or you can try Universal Opera at YouTube, or / Universal Opera. That's there too. I haven't touched it in a long time because it has older versions of the work, but I'm there. Uh,
Okay.
Twitter. I believe I'm still on kind of as Universal Opera. Um,
We'll put
yeah,
all the links in the show notes.
yeah. But a bunch of different ways. You can find me. I'm not hard to find.
Yeah, send me the YouTube link.
Okay.
And we'll do that. Your I think your perception on a lot of the work that you've worked on is very valuable for a lot of people. And I think, what are you looking to expand your network into other films as well? Or are you looking just to kind of stay in your nest?
It's a great question. I think probably staying in my nest, but I also see myself as the mother bird in that nest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if I like people, like Shern, people I do bump into that are in other groups, that are kind of adjacent. I think you can only just put in so much work into any one thing, but I told you it's like if anybody asks me nicely, I'm probably going to end up saying yes. But yeah, generally I try to stay to CCC just because when they have work cooking, I don't want to be the holdup on that. Uh,
Yes.
but that's its own trouble, and I argue with myself constantly on that. So not looking, but
Good
things
to
happen.
know. If someone wants some advice, reach out to Steve
Oh, please,
Eaton.
yeah,
Yes.
please. I will go on ad nauseum. Yeah, please shoot
There
me.
you go. All
Yeah,
right. Thank you, sir. I
it's
appreciate it.
talking to you, Joe.